Hey everybody, I'm Curtis.
And I'm Hannah.
And this is Love at First Fright.
Hello, everyone.
You're voted out.
I'm voted out?
Yeah, you're out.
What did I do?
If it's you and me and I'm getting an entry-level job
Yeah.
salary, you're out.
Okay. You're so cutthroat now. I should have never watched this reality TV show with you.
No, I'm in the strategy from day one. I know everyone on these shows always says they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you always get the one person and they're supposed to be the villain of the whole thing. And
right.
they're like,
I'm playing a game.
I'm playing for me.
I gotta protect number one.
But then they don't.
Yeah.
Right? Like they like half-ass the whole thing.
Muck it up.
But me, I'm in the end game.
Yeah.
I step in there and I'm already like
10 steps ahead every time.
Oh, we have been watching a bunch of really trashy reality shows are Netflix originals.
Reality competition shows.
Yes.
All those, like The Circle, we loved that. And
We're
by
actually behind
loved
on
that, like we mean watched it.
Yeah, I think we put it on because we were like, what is this garbage? And then we binged it in like a night.
Yeah.
We stayed up way too late watching basically the whole thing.
And it's nothing.
Yeah, it's garbage.
But our newest obsession is called The Trust. And the basic idea of it is that there's like one big pool of money and there's 11 people that come into the house and no one has to get eliminated. They could all leave by the end of the show and just split the pot. But there are opportunities where people can get voted out and even one vote is enough. Like it doesn't have to be a majority. So,
you don't have to vote, but if you don't vote and one person does vote for somebody, that person's gone.
Yeah.
And if it's a draw on the votes, then nobody goes home.
Yeah, it gets complicated and there's all these twists and turns and, there's like, they keep presenting them with these little offers where it'll be like, oh, you can personally take $5,000 from the trust if you can successfully eliminate someone.
Yeah.
Or you can prevent that from happening by giving someone immunity or whatever. So it's all about like greed and, trust and all of this stuff.
I think it's called The Trust, a Game of Greed.
Yeah.
I think is what it is called.
Because it's supposed to be kind of challenging people of like in a situation where you can benefit yourself or you can benefit the group, which also does benefit yourself.
Yeah, just not as much.
Right. How are people going to act? So.
And it turns out roughly half of the people are going to not make it to the end.
Right.
So.
Because some people are playing that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely, it was a well-constructed reality TV show in that you had the people, like, falling into the different roles. You had the certain characters who were very idealist, who were like, I'm never voting anyone out. We can all share this.
That's my man, Brian.
And then, bless him. And then you have, the people who from the beginning are cutthroat and they're like, well, we can't all make it to the end. Some people got to go. And, I just have to do what's best for me and get the most money that I can get.
Yep.
And then you kind of see like some growth of certain characters who start out a little bit more selfish, but then become selfless and vice versa.
Yeah.
So, obviously trash TV, but
it's
enjoyable
garbage.
Trash.
Yeah, it's absolute garbage, but it is enjoyable. Nothing for me will top. I think it's just called Pressure Cooker.
Yes.
On Netflix.
Beefing with a butter.
That show is so wild.
That show rules.
Like I kind of want to watch it again because it's pretty insane. It combines cooking competition with
like Big Brother or like,
there was a whole
world.
Like weird relationship that was developing, and then when they did the episode where the families come and visit,
it was like
them,
real awkward.
Like the one guy who was like flirting pretty hard.
No, flirting is putting it lightly.
with one of the other contestants. His like wife comes and joins, and then they're just like they're acting like two people that just definitely have something going on, but are trying to hide it. It's so awkward and so good. Yeah. I love it.
Definitely,
I love these shows.
If you need something to fill a Saturday, just go on Netflix, look at the reality TV category. Yeah. Anything that says Netflix original, it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Now we're watching, I think, Surviving Paradise.
Yes.
Which is not as good as...
Definitely not as good.
The Trust. But it's all right. It's kind of like... It's like Survivor, but only if like really whiny 20 somethings. Yeah. We're playing Survivor and we're afraid of camping. And I mean camping in the lightest, most generous of terms.
It's really funny because like the concept of it is that there's like a fancy, luxurious villa, but then there's also, and if you're in there, you're an insider, but then there are these people who are outsiders and they're like in the forest outside of the villa.
Which is like just down.
It's literally just like around the corner.
Yeah.
And it's a whole social game where you can get voted to go back into the villa and or you can get voted out of the villa, and it's a whole thing. And I'm not saying that there isn't a difference. There obviously is between a big luxurious mansion and then sleeping outside.
Yeah.
But they're all acting like they're like roughing it truly. And I'm like, they provided you with cots, they're providing you with like sunscreen, they had food and like
they had the backpacks when they get to the camp, because when they all show up on the first day, they all like party in the mansion as they're all showing up, and then the host comes out and says nobody gets to stay here tonight, and they all go rough it for the first night, and everyone's like, this is awful. So that starts the game out. But when they go down to the camp, there's backpacks with their names on it
with like a bunch of gear,
hiking boots.
Yes.
Everyone got at least a bucket hat because nobody was wearing them before this, and then now everyone's wearing bucket hats. It was so funny. They're definitely like being provided
electricity and stuff.
Yeah, like they all have cots or hammocks that they can just be in. And while there's not like tents that we've seen that they're set up in, and the worst part of it, you could argue, is that they only get to survive on like rice and beans.
Yeah, but again, they're not going hungry. It's just that it's a subsistence diet.
Yeah,
like, they have plenty of rice and beans. It's just obviously it's like you get tired of rice and beans.
Yeah, nobody wants rice and beans, but like they got tired of it real fast because it was one day, and one girl woke up.
Some food.
One girl woke up and was like, "I don't want rice and beans anymore," and I'm like,
"It's been 8 hours,
I'm like,
babe.
Girl, you're gonna eat at Chipotle when you get done with this, and guess what? That's 90% rice and beans."
So
just because they put some chorizo on there. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's wild.
I think what's fun about watching trashy reality TV with you is that we are the couch quarterbacks for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're constantly like, well, this is what I would do, and if you were playing a smart game, you would eliminate that person, because then that would create a domino effect of doing this and this, and you got to break that person down and flirt with him so that you can get his vote.
We were watching the Trust, and there was a point where I was like, this is what they should do right now. And then later on, when like everything was getting turned around on kind of the villain squad of the whole thing, I was like, what they should do now is go after the other person and not the main person, and like disassemble the whole thing. And it did end up kind of working out, but not the way that I thought it was going to. My favorite part about the reality show watching with you is that we watch them in their garbage, and there is, without fail, always a moment where you and I gasp audibly and look at each other, because now we're fully engrossed in this thing, and we're like, oh my god,
no,
I didn't even
eliminate that person.
I didn't see the twist coming.
It works.
It's so funny. It happens every time. It doesn't matter how garbage it is. We never see the twist coming, and we always enjoy it.
It's great.
But anyway,
this
isn't a reality TV show review podcast.
It could be.
Maybe that's a hard pivot. No, this is a horror movie review podcast.
Yes.
And this week episode, it's not this week. I mean, it is this week, but it's this episode. This episode. This time.
It's about REC.
REC.
Open bracket, REC, close bracket.
Yes.
REC.
Yeah, we're getting algebraic in here.
That's how it's stylized. But If you're not familiar with this one, it is a found footage film. I think this is the first found footage we've done on the podcast.
Yeah, you think I'd be able to remember.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
But I think you're right.
And I love found footage, so I was very excited to watch this one. This one I think is a good one.
Yeah.
It is a Spanish film.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's our first foreign language film that we've covered.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit after we watched it, that like I guess like technically speaking, the first like actual foreign film that we saw was The Ritual, because it wasn't made here in the US.
Right.
But like it gets convoluted and a little complicated with like
how like the world of
cinema and film works or whatever.
That.
So technically this is our first foreign
because
film.
It's not produced in English.
Yeah,
which,
so it's a foreign language film.
Right.
Anyway, but yes, it is our first foreign language film.
So yeah, it's in Spanish. There are I've seen this movie prior to watching it for the podcast, so there's a subtitled version. We ended up having to rent this on YouTube because we couldn't find it on any of the other streaming platforms, and the one that we rented was an English dub, so we had the voiceovers. I will say, having seen both the sub version and the dub version, I do think the sub version is better just because you get the original actors' intended portrayals and all of that stuff. However, that said, for an English dub, I don't think it was bad. I was a little bit worried when the English dub first came on. I was like, oh no.
Yeah. So I was able to look past it with this one. I will say that like right up front, it also made me a bit nervous because I think the opening to the movie is the weakest part of the dubbed version.
Yeah, it feels a little,
because it's just very noticeable.
Yeah.
And it is kind of that matching or trying to match the voice of the voice actor
right
with the person on screen, and it just doesn't quite fit. There's a couple scenes where she's like talking with another character and they like interrupt each other, and it sounds really weird and jarring when it's the dub over talking each other,
because they're having to do that intentionally rather than kind of the organic way that it occurred in the original.
And I would imagine in the sub version that you're not getting that kind of like weird awkwardness of the voice actors having to do that. But anyway.
But all that to say, so if you can check it out with subtitles, that's good. If you just prefer an English dub, then, you know, it seems like that.
If you want to put on a horror movie on your second
and not
monitor,
have to read,
on your second monitor while you like do your taxes or something like that. I can't imagine why you would do that.
I don't know why you'd pick this one.
But you know, you can.
You can do that. You're allowed. Yes, but again, this came out in 2007. It was co-written and co-directed by two gentlemen, Paco Plaza and then Joma Balaguero.
Okay.
If I mispronounce that, blame howtopronouncenames.com.
I'm not even going to attempt it.
Because I did my research, and that's what it said. But those two guys, there are sequels to Rec, and they've been involved in, you know, the sequels as well. So this is very much like their project. But it is starring, at least in terms of, you know, I could be wrong. I wasn't that familiar with the actors. When I did go look at the cast list on Wikipedia, only the main character had like a Wikipedia page. So I imagine that means that the other actors are probably not big names, even in like Spanish cinema, but I could be wrong. But the main character is played by Manuela Velasco, and then and she's playing the character Angela. And then you have Pablo Rosso, who's playing a character named Pablo.
I love when movies do that.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's fun to me. And I for me in my head, sometimes I imagine that like they had a different character name, but they kept missing the Q.
Yeah.
And so they were like, just call him Pablo now. Just God.
I also wanted to mention David Vert, who plays one of the firemen, Alex. And then I'll also mention Javier Botet, who plays kind of the monster of the film, which we'll get into later.
Sure.
There are other people in this movie, but again, these are like the main characters.
Sure.
So the basic framing of this movie is that Angela and Pablo are news reporters. Pablo is the cameraman, and Angela is the anchor. Yeah, that's the word. And they produce a news segment called While You Were Sleeping for their city. So their, segment this time is that they're shadowing at a local fire station.
Right.
So they're interviewing all the firemen, and they're, getting the rundown, and then they follow them on a call. They get an emergency call to help an elderly woman who they don't know the details. Like they kind of, it's kind of vague. They're like, she might be injured, she might be like have fallen and need help getting up, but they go out. And when they arrive, there's already chaos. There's, group of residents down there,
in the
and there's
lobby,
policemen, and, and then it just kind of spirals from there into this, spoiler alert, zombie movie.
Yeah, it's like kind of like day 1, day 0 zombie.
It's a patient zero situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all of the movie takes place within that apartment building because it quickly becomes a quarantined area. So all of these people are trapped, even though the situation is rapidly spiraling out of control and becoming more violent and more dangerous. And so that really creates kind of this like claustrophobic feeling to it, because they're trying, like, every possible exit or window is barred and they can't get out. And it's very chaotic, very high stress, because all these people are like, what the hell is going on? No one will tell us anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So the whole movie takes place within the confines of this building. And one thing that's really cool about it is that I feel like with a lot of found footage movies, we'll just use the Blair Witch as an example, right? Like a part of the creepiness of it, right, is the disorientation that they kind of experience going through the woods. And then there's other ones where they go to an abandoned like historic mental asylum or something like that,
like Grave Encounters.
Sure. Yeah. And they go in there, and then like the scariness of it is that like A, it's like ghosts or demons in there, and B, it's like just a creepy kind of environment, but you don't really get the feeling of like, where things are in it. This movie is really cool in that I think they do a really good job of setting up all of the locations that they end up going to, and you pretty much always know where you are in the movie through the lens of Pablo's camera as the movie goes on. And I think that's really cool. It's not, it does feel claustrophobic in that like you realize that they're trapped in this place, but you're also not like, I don't understand how they got into this room when they were.
It's not like a complex tunnel system. It's just an apartment building.
It's a very simple structure.
Yeah, it's just that one point of view. Sometimes in found footage, there's multiple people with cameras, or they pull them from different sources. We only have Pablo's camera as the source of truth for this movie. And I do like, because I think sometimes with found footage, while I love the found footage genre, sometimes it can feel a little bit, I don't know, just kind of unrealistic, where it's like, why would this person be recording all of this?
Yeah.
And, blah, blah, blah.
The motivations for filming make a lot of sense in this as well.
There's kind of a thing, right away, because they don't know that this is going to become what it becomes. But even, when they first arrive and police are on the scene, the police are like, why is there a camera here? Turn that off. And they're like, no, we have permission to film, and we're news and we're doing a thing. So we're going to keep recording.
Yep.
And then even as it goes along, then it kind of changes into, we have a journalistic obligation to record what's happening because there are innocent people in here who are being basically abandoned by local government, the Center for Public Health, all that stuff. And then even once that kind of throws out the window, then they still find a way to make it feel very natural, because they come to rely on
the power goes out and they need the light or the night vision.
So it's like, there's never a point where I feel like, Pablo, put the damn camera
why are you
down
still
and
recording?
Run,
you
like
know?
they really do. They're very successful in that, and I really appreciate that because I think that is something with the found footage genre that a lot of times you kind of just have to.
Yeah, there's usually a point in them where you're just like, hey guys, you should have dropped this a long time ago.
Run.
Like at a certain point, the only reason you're hanging on to this is so me, the audience, can continue watching the movie. But like realistically, realistically, the movie should have ended
20 minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. I made a joke about it fairly early on in this movie because they tell him to stop recording and he obliges and the screen does go black or whatever, and I was like, that's the end of the movie, and it's like credits nothing had even like kicked off yet or whatever, and I was like, that would be I think this one, if we just want to kind of get into it,
I would love to.
I think this one is it's a really good one. I had fun with it.
It is a zombie movie, but something that's kind of fascinating about this one is that it's more of a supernatural kind of zombie.
It's
like it follows the same logic of being an infectious disease, because there's this whole mechanism where if you get bitten, then you also become a zombie. But as we learn throughout the film, especially in the last 10-15 minutes, it's like the patient zero is actually like possessed,
right? And we don't really get a whole lot of like explanation on that. So were they actually possessed? Was this just read as a possession because the first people investigating it was the Vatican and priests and everything? Or is this kind of an explanation for a zombie virus where like a possession happened, like a demon got in there and that starts
and you're spreading possession.
Or I mean even just the one possession, but then everything else is just a virus, but like it had to get in first.
Right.
One of the other interesting things about this is that she is patient zero. What we find out by the end of the movie, the monster thing is patient zero. But one of the reasons this building ends up getting quarantined is because a dog gets sick and ends up going to a vet. And it becomes like incredibly violent and aggressive towards the other dogs there, and they have to put it down. And the health department official explains that when they did this, they removed the microchip and then it led them to the building. That's how they knew to come here.
Right.
So clearly it can also like spread through animals.
Yeah.
So
well, and we don't know because obviously part of this is a mystery, because when we first start, we just see the old woman who they originally were called out to assist. And she is, seemingly like hysterical. She's got blood on her, like she's wearing like a night dress pajama kind of thing. She's got blood on her. They think she might be injured, but she's like freaking out and they're having to restrain her, and she bites somebody on the neck, and it's this she seems like very strong too, because she is an older woman, but it's taking like 4 she's strong men
biting an officer, and then it takes another officer and 2 firemen to get her off,
and they don't know. Originally they're like, maybe she had like a psychotic break, or maybe she has dementia, or like something is going on. But then as we go along, it's like the officer who was bitten, he's not in a good state. He's losing a lot of blood, and eventually they kind of quarantine the officer and one of the other firefighters that got injured, because they don't know like what's going on with them. But the firefighter scene is actually, I think, one of the good scares of the movie. Because after the officer gets injured, they all, bring him downstairs to the lobby area with the residents, and everyone's freaking out. It's so chaotic. People are trying to stop the bleeding, and they're, all this stuff. They're trying to figure out what the heck's going on. And then it's like you don't even realize that you don't know where the other firefighter is in that moment, because it's so chaotic and so fast paced. And then it's like there's just this moment of quiet, and then splat. And the other firefighter has fallen down. There's, these stairs going up in the center of the room, and he has fallen down from an upper floor and landed right in front of them with an ugly splat. Yeah. And he also looks like, in addition to his injuries from the fall, that he has also been bitten.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what the hell's going on with this old lady?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's a cool way to do an intro into a zombie outbreak. Mm-hmm. It does kind of unfold the mystery of what's going on really well. Like, right. I feel it's really well paced. I think the movie's an hour and a half, maybe a little over that. You don't feel the runtime of it.
No.
Because I feel like it is just exceptionally paced. That like I said, the beginning of this movie is fairly quick. Mm-hmm. Angela and Pablo are doing this just normal report on like what's a fire station like, and I mean, they even talk with the firemen that are there that like, we may not even get a call, like right. A normal night doesn't necessarily include that, like we all sleep here, we eat here, we
and even if we games. Get a call, it may be because
it's
there's
not
a cat stuck in a tree.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a fire. So like, they're not necessarily even expecting to get a call. Now, obviously, Angela and Pablo want there to be one right. because it's more exciting for them. And, of course there is, but it's fairly short from just the normal stuff, nothing's going on, to when they get the call.
And then stuff really breaks
and then
bad.
They get to the apartment, and then that's pretty much it. You're in it at that point. Everyone's kind of yelling. The officers go up and with the firemen, and we have the whole scene with the lady. But then after that, I mean, that's
immediately when, because they're trying to get the injured out.
Yes.
And that's immediately when they find out, oh, this place has been quarantined, and there's a bunch of officers and what look like, military outside basically saying, do not approach the door. Yeah. You have been like quarantined for your own safety or whatever, which it's not for their own safety. No. I can guarantee you that. And honestly, it's funny because the police officer, I think his name was Sergio. There were two of them. Yes. There was the older guy and then there was a younger cop. And in some ways, like, that character's kind of a dick, but I also kind of feel bad for him because they have people outside on like a megaphone, and they're saying like, stay calm, and the officer inside will give you instructions. And it's very clear that this officer has no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
And so he is simultaneously having to take control of the situation where people are dying because they're extremely injured and bleeding out.
Yep.
You have people who are in hysterics and don't know what's going on, and they're scared. There's a mom with a child there who has a fever, and she's like, my husband was just running to the pharmacy. He's outside. He can't get in. She needs her medicine. So there's all these people just freaking out. And he's also more than likely freaking out on the inside, but he's now been told, take control of this situation.
You're in charge. And I got the sense he was like a rookie cop.
I got that sense too. Yeah.
Because there's a scene later where they go back up to that.
The original old woman.
The old woman apartment.
Yeah.
And he ends up having to shoot her.
Mm-hmm.
And the way he reacts to that is how you would imagine somebody who's never shot.
Yeah, like it seems like he's probably not been in a situation like this before.
Yeah.
And he's completely like in shock, which I mean, to be fair, you should be in shock if you shot somebody, but maybe we're a little jaded. But yeah, it's, I got the sense too that he was kind of a rookie, and he's trying to take control of the situation, but he also doesn't know any more than anybody else does.
Yeah.
And of course, this group is not being cooperative. Like, people are scared. They're desperate. They keep trying to find different exits and getting thwarted at every turn.
Yeah.
I think his heart is in the right place, that he's trying to help, but also he sort of takes the role of a villain in the movie a little bit, because everyone else is like so desperate to get out, and he's trying to keep everyone in.
Right.
But, eventually things kind of calm down a little bit. They put the two injured guys in a separate area. There's a, he's not a doctor. He calls himself a medical assistant. Yes. I don't know if that was was that like a translation thing? Like, I've heard of a medical assistant, but I don't think of them as doing actual patient care. So maybe he's like a nurse.
Maybe. I don't know.
Like a tech
I don't know,
or
but
something.
yeah, I would imagine he's like a nurse, basically.
Yeah. So he has some medical training. So he's kind of trying his best to treat the injuries, but it's not like he's got a bunch of stuff. He's got regular first aid supplies.
Yeah, he's
in
got
his apartment.
Bandages and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they're trying to make the most of it. They're also trying to come up with some, order, because they finally get an update that a health officer from the Center of Public Health is going to enter.
Yeah.
And so they get everyone together. They're doing roll call to make sure that they know where everybody is. And one of the families then reveals that the elderly father of the family is sick and he's upstairs in his bed or whatever.
Yep.
So then people are like, I bet he's the one that started the infection. And they also know that there's like a top floor apartment, like an attic apartment, but nobody lives there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just closed off. But even once the health officer comes in, it doesn't really help the situation at all. Like he doesn't like come in bearing answers.
Well, no, he comes in and they explain that he's going to come in and take blood samples from everyone to make sure that everyone in there isn't infected. And again, they're not telling them what it could possibly be. So yeah, he's supposed to get blood samples, but he pretty quickly just focuses on the two men who were like already hurt.
Bitten,
and bit. And while they're kind of going through all of that, that's when things like super pop off. So the two guys kind of succumb to the infection and they start attacking, and the medical assistant guy gets bit in the fray.
Yeah.
And ends up breaking out of the room, and they were in like this back office area kind of a thing.
There's like, I think it's like a shop that's like at the bottom floor of the apartment. So it has like one of those like in a mall, like the big,
it's like a garage door
thing that comes down.
So they end up having to run back into the lobby, when all that happens, and then the little girl who was sick, then she succumbs to her infection thing and bites the mom in the face as she's holding her, and then runs off upstairs, which to me was one of the funnier moments of the movie. It was unintentionally funny.
You thought that was funny?
Not her getting bit, the reaction to the biting. So she like drops her, which that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then every other zombie person just like mindlessly rushes at the people to try to like bite them and stuff. And the little girl goes for the stairs and runs up the stairs.
Well, it's like she like screams at them first.
Yeah.
And then she just like starts to go.
And like none of the other ones do that.
Yeah.
Like they scream, and I get that. They're all like, ah, when they're about to charge at you. And that's fine. That's just what these zombies do.
Yeah.
But she's the only one that like went away from where everyone was.
I don't really know why that was.
I don't know either.
I mean, the only justification I can really give for it is that it does seem like these are not necessarily the mindless zombies that we know. Like, it seems like there's some level of thought.
There's definitely some level of thought.
And so it could have been as simple as a self-preservation thing if she knows she's small and she's outnumbered. And so she's not going to go for she's not going to go for somebody in a big group, because she does, eventually attack, but it's when there's way a smaller number.
Yeah, she runs upstairs and ends up going into it's the same apartment that the original woman that they were called there for was, but when they go back up there because they had to shoot her,
and the
body's not there anymore. So they're like, that's crazy. So the cop and the firefighter and Pablo end up going up there, and Angela stays down in the lobby to kind of like help see to some things going on, and they go up there to try to get the little girl back, because I guess they don't fully.
Well, the
that's right. Yeah,
guy, he came with like these syringes, and he injected both of the original injured guys with the syringes. I don't know what, like, in universe, what that is supposed to be.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's like a possible, maybe there's like a vaccine that they're testing, or maybe it's just like literally a lethal injection. Like, I don't know what it is.
I'm not sure.
But he provides a syringe
to
them,
cop.
and he's like, make sure to give this to the girl.
Yeah. So they all go up to go get her, and then during this, the cop gets bit.
Yeah.
And he does kind of the hero sacrifice.
Yeah, he's like, I've already been bitten, just get out.
Takes her into a room, and then as they're going to leave, the old lady pops out again.
Scare.
And this was the funniest moment of the movie, and I'm recognizing there's a trend with me in horror movies, and this is 100% on me. Judge me for it all you want. It will never not be funny when anybody decks an old lady in a horror movie. It's funny every time, and I don't care how serious or scary the moment is.
She really got it too.
Oh yeah,
the firefighter had like a
sledgehammer.
Yeah, like a sledgehammer, like one of those like rubber tip. Yeah, and he just bop, and she goes
picks it up,
down.
and he doesn't swing it at her. He takes it and he's holding it. I don't know how to describe it. Like the head of the thing, it's like he's holding like a spear. Yeah. Like he's gonna jab her with it.
Prods her.
And he uses the literally the top end of the sledgehammer right in the face, and she just she gets like stunned by it. It's so funny.
Yeah, there is something very funny about people getting punched in the face, and I don't know what that is, but it makes me laugh too when I see it in horror movies. It just feels so like unserious.
I don't know. Maybe it's just the idea that like it's a horror thing, and this is supposed to be like a zombie, or it's the killer that's been unstoppable coming after them the whole time,
and you're just
getting stopped by a punch, and you're just like, that's all it took, to stop him.
That's the kryptonite, just one quick punch.
It's so funny.
Yeah, but it's that was another good scare, I think, because they set it up. They set up a lot of things really well. Yeah, where you have like, we know exactly where she was, and like they frame this the same way every time, of like the long hallway with, you know, the room at the end with the window open and the light spilling in, and like you know, we see it the same way every time, and so it's immediately noticeable to us because we've seen this hallway.
Yes. The familiarity of the location and what should be there, but things are different now.
And so you're immediately on edge, and you're very much like, that's gonna come back, you know? And then it does, like, almost right away. And so I really love that. They do that a lot throughout the film, where, like, things that they set up, they, you know, deliver on later. And I think it adds to the tension because we notice that as the audience, and so then we're on edge waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Absolutely. You know? There's another scene after everything's kind of gone off. I'm gonna put this, there's a kind of a racist old man that's living in the apartment.
Weird guy.
He does not like Chinese people, is the long and short of it. But he ends up being like part of this group of survivors after the cop and the firefighter and the medical assistant have been bitten, and they've like come back and are coming after them. They've had to abandon the lobby, and they run up to presumably that guy's apartment. Yeah. Because they go in there and they're safe for now. But they start like, we got to get out of here. And they're like, what are we supposed to do? And he's like, no. The health official made it in. He's in the other room. And they go find him. And he's sitting at the end of this weird hallway thing.
I don't know what
that area was. Yeah. It doesn't matter. But he's sitting at the end of it. And he's like, no, they bit me during this. You need to get out of here. He walks up and he closes this like one of those elevator kind of doors, like a grate thing. Yeah, he closes that door and then locks it and throws the key so he can't get out, and there's glass on there too or whatever. During all of this, the guy explains, that the racist man explains, he's like, no, we can get out through the basement in the shop because there's a thing that leads to the sewers. We could do that, but we'll have to get the keys from they're on the guy who kind of like runs the whole thing. Yeah. We have to go up there to get that. And so he's explaining this, and it's the setup of, you know, in every zombie movie when they've secured themselves inside of a thing, which this one's really good because, like, you're in an apartment, they're not on the first floor, and the zombies aren't outside of the building.
Right.
So you can't be afraid of standing next to a window there because they wouldn't come from outside. But he stands near the door that the health official guy just locked himself into. And then, of course, the guy turns and he grabs him through the bars and the glass, and he's biting
like the back of his head.
That one was legitimately very good because it's a twist on that kind of trope and setup of like they're gonna get grabbed through the thing.
Well, it's also interesting because the health official had briefly mentioned like much earlier that this infection, part of it is that it reacts differently to different blood types.
Yeah.
So it's faster or shorter depending on the blood type. So there's also kind of this feeling of like we don't know how long we have after someone gets bitten, because for some people, like the little girl, she was sick all evening and she didn't turn until just then.
Yep.
But then for the health officer, it's been all of 3 minutes.
Yep.
And then he turns. So that's also really scary because you don't even have the option of like, I'll just wrap this bad boy up and keep fighting for a few more minutes because you might be one of them in a few more minutes.
Yep. No, it's really cool. So once they kind of develop the plan of like, we need to go up to get the key so that we can get into the shop and get out of this place, they start panicking because at this point now everyone's been got except for
Angela, Pablo, and Alex.
Is it Alex or Manu? Or is it the same guy?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's Manu.
Manu, yeah, that's it.
It might be. There were 2 officers, or there were 2 firefighters.
I think Alex is the one that gets got,
killed
earlier, and I think
Manu
is the one that's with them. Anyway, but it's those 3 left, and they start freaking out because they're like, we don't even know where this guy lives in this apartment building. How are we supposed to do that? And I don't know if you thought about this when they were talking about it, because they start kind of chastising Manu about it, and they're like, you did roll call, you should know. And he's like, I can't remember, which is fair. I understand he can't remember. This is like brand new information. It's obviously a very stressful, chaotic environment. Don't expect him to remember. But you know what would remember and have flawless memory?
The
camera that was recording them doing the roll call. And they don't think to rewind it, which is interesting because earlier in the movie, they rewound it to make sure they got a certain shot, which is when the old lady rushed them.
Right.
And the officer had to shoot her. They rewind it specifically to watch that scene again. And I'm like, why wouldn't they just do that?
I don't know. I thought the same thing.
We'll just chalk it up to panic, stressful information. Yep. And that's fine, because what the plan becomes is we need to go back down to the lobby and go to the mailboxes, because it will have their apartment and the name and everything. And they do that. They go up to the apartment where the guy's like supposed to be. So they go into his apartment and Jess, Pablo, and Angela go in, and because on the way up, they encounter a couple, people
Manu's
who have been
holding down the
zombied.
fort. He's killing people. He's, guarding the door.
Yeah, and he says, you guys go, I'm going to stay here. Right. And he's got the sledgehammer, and he's ready.
He's doing
stuff. And they tear this apartment up looking for the keys, and they find it. And of course, it's like a comical ring of keys with
the big janitor ring that has 35,000 keys on it.
It's so good.
Yes.
Because they pick it up and they're like, which one is it? And I'm like, you guys should just give up.
Just give up.
You're not going to guess.
I think this was another one of those movies, because I had that exact same thought at one point where I was like, I think I just don't have the same, maybe it would be different if I was actually in that moment, but I'm like, you're telling me if I'm in this situation, no, I'm checking out early.
I just feel like there's a lot of brick walls they keep coming up against, and they just keep insisting we're gonna bust through that one too. And
we're gonna keep going. I'm like, eventually you run out of time, brother.
You guys made it into this apartment. Maybe just lock yourselves in.
Just lock the apartment door and just
wait for the military to come in. Yeah, because nobody's responding or something, and you'll be fine.
But anyway, because when they get the keys, by the time they come out, it's even more chaotic than it was before. Manu has been attacked.
Yeah, they overlook the railing.
Yeah, there's a really great shot because it's like one of those winding staircases where it's totally empty in the middle, so you can look right down to the first floor. And they peek over, and all these heads come out from different floors. You have Manu, you have the cop, you have different people, and they're all fucked up looking. And one thing I did really want to praise about this movie, because I thought it was very interesting, they did something with the noises that the infected make, it almost sounds like animalistic.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't sound like a person is making those sounds.
No.
And it really adds to the fear because it feels so alien.
Yeah.
And it's like this screech almost, and it feels wrong. And like, you just hear that sound emanating from the stairs. So they're like, we can't go down, so
yeah, and all the zombies start coming up,
yeah.
hear them up the stairs, so they go up and they get to that, like, penthouse apartment.
Yeah. By some stroke of dumb luck, Angela was blessed that day. God said, here's the key, babe.
Yeah, it's like the second key she tries and she makes it in.
And it works, yep.
And they get in literally at the last second.
Yeah, lock
and
the
then
door.
This is where we get, like, kind of the answers to a lot of this. So up here, I guess this guy that had been, like, researching all of this has, like, all of these notes all over the wall about this one case of this little girl who had been possessed, and, like, the church had been investigating.
They call her the Medeiros girl.
Yeah, and they find, like, a tape recorder that I guess is battery powered, or maybe just the lights have gone off. I don't
know. It's like they don't have... She says they don't have electricity, but then it does come on, so I'm not sure.
It's weird, and unless it's battery powered, it really doesn't make sense, because otherwise that just means the lights are cut off. And
I'm guessing it's just that it's battery powered, because at this point the lights have gone out. So this is at the phase where the only light they have is the spotlight bulb on Pablo's camera, so they're having to use that to, like, look around at all these notes and stuff.
And they find, like, documents all over the place, and all of this is basically saying that, like, she's patient zero. This little girl is patient zero.
She was, like, possibly possessed, but in some of the, like, clips and stuff, it seems like they were doing research on her to develop a vaccine, because there's, like, references to that at different points, but like, it's not working.
And they talk about this enzyme that they've been able to, like, isolate, but it's, like, really unstable, and we can't seem to do anything with it. And then I think the thing about it is that, like, so what we're seeing is it's not just, like, a science-y setup where he's, like, been doing research.
Right.
It's very obvious that she was also here.
Yes.
But we don't see this guy or person that was like renting the apartment or her anywhere.
It's just like this, and it looks like people haven't been there in a while. Like, it looks really, run down, and there's dust and cobwebs on everything. And in addition to the sciencey element, because there's definitely, like, there's, like, an exam table and all that
beakers.
Stuff. But beakers and gauges and gears.
Knobs. Twisty doodads. There's a guy in a lab coat just standing there. He's like, science!
But in addition to the science, there's also, like, a lot of religious iconography.
Yes.
So there's, like, portraits of Mother Mary and Jesus, and there's
crucifixes on the wall,
rosaries and crucifixes and all that stuff. I almost called it a rosemary, not a rosary. My brain is broken.
Just got spices.
Some are
sage
spiritual
and
too.
Thyme just stapled.
Yes.
In between the articles.
So it is kind of this, like, combination of the religious and the scientific, because they really believe that this virus is, like, a form of possession that is contagious.
Yeah.
And of course, like, we don't know that for certain. This is what the characters believe.
Yes.
So this is really, like, the climax of the film as they're investigating this area. And
they start hearing noises while they're in there.
Noises, but they don't know where it is.
And they're in the top floor, but, like, it's very evident, like, what they hear is above them.
Yes.
And so they're like, that's weird. But Pablo's like, it's probably just pipes. Don't worry about it. We're fine. Nobody's been in here for so long. They said this was, like, sealed off. So whatever.
Because they had explained earlier that, like, someone does own that apartment, but he doesn't actually live there. They eventually do investigate above them because they find, like, an open hatch for the attic that swings down.
Yeah, almost
very scary.
Fucking clocked Angela in the head.
Yeah. So they, Pablo has this idea that he'll stick the camera up the hatch, opening, and, like, just do like a 360 so that they can see what's in there without him having to go up himself. And of course, us as the audience, it's a very tense moment of it going through this. It's like an attic, storagey space. There's, furniture with like sheets on it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But he's going around, we're not seeing anything. And then we see something. We get a shot of what looks like, to me, looks like maybe like a young boy. We don't spend a lot of time on this character, but obviously infected and breaks the spotlight bulb. So now they're 100% in the pitch black darkness.
Yep. And then it switches to night vision. The only way they can see is through the night vision.
It's so scary.
Pablo takes the lead and gets Angela to follow him around the apartment.
She's like holding on to him.
And as they look, he like pans across and there's the light coming in through the window, and you just see this weird, elongated, gangly silhouette holding a hammer.
Yes.
And just kind of like waving it around.
Sort of stumbling in the dark.
And he's like, what the fuck is that?
And what the fuck is that indeed?
Because they don't know. They have no idea what the hell this is. And it starts coming towards them.
Yes.
And he's like, fuck. So they go and try to hide, and
they're trying to just be quiet because they think that it can't see. So they're trying to just like not alert it to their location.
Yeah.
Which kind of works at first.
It worked. It honestly does work until they go to sneak past it, because again, they can't see anything because it's in the dark, and Pablo's focusing on the thing, and he had Angela go in front of him to get through this door. And I guess what happens is because she can't see, she knocks something over.
Yes, it causes a big noise.
And this thing freaks out.
Yes.
And it looks like this basically naked woman.
It looks like an old woman. She's wearing like just like underwear bottoms.
Yeah. Panties.
Yes. Very old, dirty panties. Yes. Weird.
Pantaloons.
But very like the face is kind of there's like sort of a slightly too open jaw, very slack, and of course like these long spindly limbs, and the hair that's looks like it's fallen out in patches and stuff. And this thing just starts freaking out. It's swinging the hammer. They're trying to get away, but everybody's in the dark.
Yeah.
And it eventually does get Pablo.
Yeah, and just starts wailing on him with a hammer. And then Angela finds the camera.
Yeah,
in
she's
the dark,
trying to.
And she's, she films for a second, and she sees it like eating him, and then it gets up and comes after her.
Yeah,
and
she falls. Camera drops. She's trying to get back to the camera. And the final shot is
her getting dragged away in the night vision. You don't even really see what's dragging her. It's obviously probably the thing. But
it's the thing. And I do just want to shout out, because I think it's important that that character of the Medeiros girl is played by horror legend Javier Botet.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know him by name, you have definitely seen his other work. He was the Crooked Man in Conjuring 2. He played the like witchy woman in It Chapter 2.
God, that thing's creepy.
Yes.
Oh man.
He's been in so many things, and he actually in real life he has Marfan syndrome. Which is a connective tissue disorder, and part of how it presents is that it does tend to, people who have Marfan's, they are really long and slender, and they're known for having these like very long fingers.
Wow. And
kind of having like very prominent bones like spines and hips and stuff. And so that's actually why he's like 6'7". He's a big guy, but he's incredibly thin, and just like obviously they enhance it with makeup and everything, but he just kind of has this build that works for horror monsters, and he does his role very well.
It's very effective.
He's wonderful in everything he's been in. He's a great, he's kind of like Doug Jones, and he's just like this like icon of like creature actors. Loved him in this. I personally love the effect of the woman. It's my understanding of it is that it's largely practical effects. I don't know if they enhance it afterwards with CGI or anything like that.
I'm sure there's some things that they do.
But it is mostly practical.
Which is cool, because I didn't realize that. You actually told me, because I thought it was mostly CGI. And you were like, no, it's practical. Like, most of it's practical, if not all of it. And I was like, that's wild.
Yeah.
One thing during that scene that I thought was... It's a cool detail and really creepy, but I think easy to miss, and also like if you're not thinking about it, maybe doesn't come across as well. When everything pops off with the girl, you know, chasing them with the hammer and everything.
Yeah.
There's a scene where Pablo like kind of turns around because he's having to like look where he's trying to go, so he doesn't stumble over stuff, but then he's like turning around to see where she is.
Right.
And one of the times he turns around, she's like turned and facing towards a wall, and she has the hammer, and she's just like slamming the hammer into the wall. And when I first saw this, I was like, that's kind of goofy. Why is she doing that? It's just like a weird scare tactic, and why would she do it? I don't think that's what it is. I think it's that because she can't see and like all of this noise is happening, she just thought maybe one of them was there, and it's just like that.
Just going
and
for
it's when you kind of like internalize it like that, that becomes terrifying.
That's horrible.
Because like that's literally what happens to Pablo in like the next 30 seconds, and you're like, oh god.
Yeah. And it's she's very alarming. I mean, obviously, so I mean the implication is that she has been in here for
however long. I mean,
I don't know, decades.
Yeah, it's got to be decades.
Yeah, and obviously she's not, like, she has been horribly changed by whatever this infection is.
Yeah,
and
the infection and probably the experiments too.
Yeah. Who knows how much of this is to blame for the way they reacted to it and less, you know, the infection itself. But yeah, she's, to me, kind of a sympathetic character because I'm like, that was like a little girl who like,
it's messed up.
They thought she was possessed. She might have been possessed. We don't know. And either way, she was subjected to endless torture and experiments until she was eventually just fully abandoned in a closed off apartment. I mean, obviously she's a monster in this movie because she's going around killing people, but like, I kind of feel bad for her. Yeah,
we don't really get any answers to who the little boy that we see in the attic is. We don't know anything about that. The researcher guy supposedly lives in Madrid. We don't have any answers about that guy. Right. So, you know, the movie ends when Angela gets dragged. That's it.
I will say, if anyone, you know, is interested in learning more, Rec 2 pretty much picks up like directly where this one left off. And you do get a lot more exploration of,
which I think is cool,
what the nature of the infection is and all of that stuff. Some people really like that movie, some people don't like it. I think the sequels are kind of controversial, but I think whether you watch it with 2 or you just watch this, I think it's kind of satisfying either way because the unanswered questions in 1 are very unsettling.
Well, it's just a mystery, right? Like, it's you don't have to answer the questions in a horror movie for it to be effective. I would say 9 times out of 10, don't answer the questions because once you start doing that, you open yourself up to scrutiny and, you know, there's you can't speculate about it. If there's a definitive answer to what it is, then we know how it works. There's rules, you know, whatever. But anyway, I think we should rate it, talk about maybe the scariest moment first.
Yeah.
For me, I think this is pretty easy what the scariest moment is in the whole thing. It is basically the entire, when they're in the attic apartment and specifically the night vision scene. It's really scary. It's pitch black in there. The only one of them can see at a time, and then when Angela bumps into the thing and you know, makes the clattering noise, and then she's, you know, the monster starts coming after him. It's terrifying. The whole sequence is pretty terrifying.
I think that probably is the scariest scene. I would also spotlight, there's a point in the kind of chaos building up to that climax where they're running up and down the stairs where the lights go out, and that's when Pablo first turns on his spotlight, and when he turns it back on, one of the zombies is standing in front of him, and I think that's a really effective jump scare. That one usually gets me, and I tend to forget about it by the time I go to watch it again, so it works like every time. But the night vision scene is just unparalleled. It's tense,
very good
from the first moment until the credits start to roll.
And it's I mean, I think it's kind of like a textbook, like pitch black, night vision only, scary monster, you know, scene. So I
feel
think it's
so
really
vulnerable, and it's real scary.
It's also one of the only places in the movie that we don't spend that much time. So as uncomfortable as the characters feel in the space, you also feel, because I mean,
you're in uncharted
by
territory.
the time they get in it, they don't have anything but the spotlight from the camera, and then that goes, so it's just night vision. So you know, you never get to feel comfortable in it.
Creepy. Yeah. Do you want to talk about, for the rating we had mentioned last time, we were gonna make a scorecard?
So we implemented that. We actually used it this time to rate it as kind of a trial run, and I think it worked out really well.
Yeah.
For how we want to do it. And just to give a basic rundown of how it works for us, we divided it into 5 categories.
Yep.
We have scares, performance, visuals, vision, and vibes, or like the X factor.
Yeah.
And each one of those is subdivided down into like different things. So performance is the acting and the dialogue. Mm-hmm. The vision, what we mean by that is like the directing or the plot and the theme and everything. And then the visuals is like the cinematography and the special effects, like what you're actually seeing there. And then vibes, X Factor is kind of our catch-all for anything that we didn't get.
Yeah. It might be like a cool soundtrack or just,
we kind of wanted to break this down in case it was more of like a comedy style horror movie that isn't necessarily super scary, but is really entertaining because it's funny. So we don't want to fault a movie.
It just has that entertainment value.
It's just fun to watch kind of thing. And then scares is self-explanatory. It's just how scary it is to us personally.
Yeah.
So we broke this down. I don't think we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what we individually each rated.
No, I think this is something we're going to basically do behind the scenes, but we wanted to share with you guys what those categories are so that you have an idea of like what is going into our scores.
Yes.
So we're each providing our own score for those 5 categories.
Yes.
And then coming up with our average between the categories independently.
Yep. So each one of those categories we rated out of 10, add them up, divide it by 5. You know how math works, hopefully. Maybe. I certainly don't. This took me longer than I'd like to admit to figure out how to make sure this worked right. But anyway, all of that said, I ended up with a 7.4 rating for the movie.
And I ended up with a 7.6 rating for the movie.
And so then we added those up and then divided that by 2, and we got it at a 7.5, literally smack between ours.
So the official Love at First Fright score for Rec is a 7.5.
Yep. So we did it.
We did it, y'all.
We came up with a score thing. Now, whether this continues to hold, we'll see.
Yeah. And in the future, we're not going to go through each of these categories again. We just wanted to introduce it to you guys. And if you have any feedback on, maybe things that we missed in our categories or other things we should consider, feel free, because we're not set in stone with this.
Yeah.
But I think a 7.5 is a very fair rating for this movie. I think it's a really good movie, especially in terms of found footage. I think if you are a found footage fan, or maybe you are looking for an introduction into the genre, this would be a great pick.
Yeah. I think when you compare it against like the body of found footage movies, because like Blair Witch really kicked that off.
Yeah.
And then so many movies after that were just found footage, and so many of them were garbage.
Yes.
This is a like shining example
really
of a good one. I have heard, again, we watched Rec and we mentioned the word quarantine multiple times while reviewing this. There is an American remake of the movie.
Yes.
That is called Quarantine.
Yes.
I don't think I've seen that one.
I know that I haven't. I've been told it's basically a shot-for-shot remake.
Yes. So you could probably watch that one.
Yeah, that one might be somewhere.
I don't know if it'll get it. We should watch it sometime. Maybe we'll watch it again for this, and we'll do like a second reviewing of it.
Yeah. I actually was thinking, just to throw this out there, and maybe if any listeners have ideas, I think it might be fun to do episodes where we watch an original and a remake at the same time, and we do kind of like a comparison.
It's a double feature.
Yeah. So if that's something that people are interested in, let me know if you got any good original versus remake suggestions.
We could do Suspiria.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
There's all sorts of them.
Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Halloween.
There's tons of them.
Halloween's gonna suck because we're gonna have to watch 3.
Yeah.
Back to back to back.
Yeah. Or maybe it'll rule because we get to watch 3.
It won't.
Oh, goodness. What you have to look forward to next week is
Cabin in the Woods.
Cabin in the Woods.
I'm really excited about this. I've seen this movie quite a number of times.
Yeah.
It's a really good horror comedy.
It's a great horror comedy.
I still remember scenes really well from this.
Definitely check it out before the next episode. If you haven't seen it, it's worth a watch, and then we'll discuss it together. And we do appreciate you joining us once again. If you have any feedback for us or any suggestions on films that you would like us to cover, feel free to send us an email at firstfrightpod@gmail.com. We're also on basically all the socials, Instagram, X, Elon Musk's X as well.
He's back.
He's back. We're on all of those at First Fright Pod. Keep it coming. If you have the opportunity to leave a review or a like or anything like that, we really appreciate it. Or just tell somebody. If you got a horror fan in your life, send them our way, because we'd love to hear their thoughts as well.
Yeah. I think that does it for us.
That's all I had.
Alrighty. Well then, this time, as always, scare well, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.